But as a historian and as a writer, communication is the whole thing, isn't it? And particularly, illustrating or using the presentation tonight to bring and tie in, as Ann said, connecting the dots, because we're just inundated with information. And, there's just one spectacular event after another. And the question is, what does this all mean? And how is it going to affect me and my family and my finances and my career? And so what I'm going to do tonight, and I did go to a conference down in Tucson about a month ago. It's the Casey conference. And I have followed Doug Casey for probably 25 years. And I know Doug personally. But what they started out, the conference, which I'll do here and duplicate, is give you 4 themes or 5 themes that what are we looking at here politically, economically, socially, and technologically going forward, and how will it affect you, possibly affect you going forward into the next year? Because Zan just said, next year is a critical year. Not only because of the election, but well, because I thought it was okay. Can I keep this? No, can I keep this? That's great. Social, political, economic, and technological. I call it the macrocosm. Start with the big picture first, and then work it back to the microcosm or the small world to deal with. And it's great to be speaking to this group because I don't have to be politically correct as I do in some audiences. In fact, I've been very effective at my real estate class. But 2 months ago, one guy that was very strong left, an Obamaite in the audience, went to the Department of Real Estate and said, "This guy is, way out, is way out in right field," and so forth. So, I get mixed audiences, and but overwhelmingly, people are very, very receptive to what I have to say. And it's nice to be able to call a spade and not a little bitty shovel. So that's going to be present in my presentation to you tonight. Let's start with technology. And, there's the good and the bad. The bad thing about technology, and looking at the big picture, is the fact that it has eliminated so many jobs that will never come back. And to give you an example, in the 60s, males between the ages of 25 and 54, 96% of men in that age category were employed. Today, that same group is 62%. So when people start talking about jobs, they don't get right down to the basics. And I don't hear anybody talking about technology having this disruptive impact on jobs, but it has. And, some of the technology is obviously wonderful, like the real estate business. I mean, the way we do business today, it's just incredibly efficient opposed to 20, 25 years ago. The thing that you're going to see very quickly is a cashless society. And you already see it happening. There was an ad the other day with Samsung's new Samsung Pay. And you have to have a reader to handle the Google Pay or whatever, the Google Wallet now. But Samsung, and I'll upgrade my Samsung, but he walks in the ad, he walks up and he puts his smartphone up against a clerk has got the unit there, and she said, "Well, that won't work here. We haven't gotten that yet." And it goes ding, ding, and prints the receipt, so forth. And she said, "Oh, But NFC, near field communications, is a technology that is going to take us by storm. Now, the bad side of that is that the reason why the government wants this is they want to track everything that we purchase. And there's going to be peer-to-peer tracing. I told the guys that play golf with, about our betting or going to a yard sale or so forth. They want to track that too. And that's what it's going to do. That's what the smartphone is going to do. So, there's the good and the bad, but the cashless society is coming. And it's come very quickly. What retailers, for example, I got the new credit card the other day with the gold chip in it because somebody had hacked into our other account. So we go to the bank, a couple days, we get the new card, and within 2 days, this was supposed to be hack-proof. Somebody hacked into our new card with the gold chip. It's just absolutely amazing. So here's what people don't know is that up to this point, the banks have been covering our losses, right? When this cashless society, the NFC, comes, the retailer is responsible for any of the hacking loss. The retailer. And a lot of them don't know that yet, but that's what's coming. One of the things I want to inform you of tonight, if you haven't already heard, is the Uberization of money. There was a major article in the Wall Street Journal. In fact, it's a whole section here. That's one of my sources, is the Wall Street Journal and Barron's. The Uberization of money. What do you suppose this means? What is Uber? The taxi. In other words, you want to make some additional income and so forth. Yeah, it's right, and it's what they call peer-to-peer. In other words, person-to-person using your smartphone or your PC. Well, it's had a tremendous impact on yellow cab and all these major cabs, particularly in metropolitan areas like New York City. You make a connection with some guy that's got a car and he's only a couple blocks away, and boom, he's there and you're off. So it's had a tremendous impact on that industry. But they've taken this now to finance, where you can, and these are small sums. These are pools of money that are controlled by individuals. And you go online, and if you've got a business, you need a business loan, whether it be $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, in one day, you're going to get a response from the people that are processing your request. And of course, they're just circumventing the banks. They're, the traditional, what it is the, what they call it is the intermediaries are going to become obsolete. There's intermediaries in all financial, in real estate and the lending business, and it's going to apply to real estate too, here pretty soon. But I have here the list of the companies. I was driving down the street here today, coming down Southern, and there was an ad there by Cabbage, K-A-B-B-A-G-E, about small business loans, and they'll go up to $100,000, and they guarantee to approve it in one day, or reject it or approve it in one day, and you have your money 3 days later. So you see what's happening, and also, unknown to most people is that Congress passed a bill in 2012 that allows it's effective after the first of the year, 2016, where a company can raise up to $1 million by soliciting people, investors, without going through the hassle of a long form registration with the SEC, with all of these things. This is absolutely amazing, particularly with this administration, which deems capitalism as the cause of all of our ills. But I just bring this to your attention because most people have never heard of it, and I featured it on my podcast. To give you an idea, do you know what Oculus Rift is? That's the virtual reality that you put on your head and so forth. Well, what they were talking about while I was driving out here today, it took me an hour and a half to get here tonight from North Phoenix. The traffic is unbelievable. But anyway, picture Carson Palmer, the quarterback for the Cardinals. He's got this big unit on his head. And in front of him, he can see all the defenses that he faces and all the people and where they're going and so forth. And he's assimilating 171 plays that the coach can call during a game. 171, and then all kinds of variants and so forth. But that's Oculus Rift. Well, the guys that came up with this idea of this virtual reality needed some capital, and they borrowed $2.4 million from a company called Quickstarter. That's an appropriate name, Quickstarter, or Kickstarter, excuse me. Well, in 1 year, they sold that company to Facebook for $2 billion. Now, we hear success stories like that all the time we don't hear about the ones that failed. But anyway, this venture capital, this is how you get the economy going. This is how you create jobs. And it's amazing in this environment that we're in, political environment, that can happen. Now, what I'm saying to you, and if this applies to you, is that you're going to hear from me in just a little bit, is that we're faced with a massive, massive change in our economy, in our society, as you undoubtedly know. And I'm going to give you specifics. Now is the time to use this type of capital for your business. If for nothing else, to have a reserve, you know, the 2008, 2009, we all went through that. Having a cash reserve would have been nice. Also, to use this source as an opportunity to buy other businesses that are going to close their doors because they didn't prepare. So, you know, I think this is opening up a whole different area, and all about technology, as they said on the conference a month ago, is that technology is going to grow so fast that we don't even know where the opportunities are today. So young people getting in the industry today, it's a wide open field. Okay, let's jump to the second theme. We're talking about the social changes that are coming. This, of course, is you're very well aware of it. But the theme is, and I said this at the time, man, is that in my real estate class, is the whole real estate boom from 2002 to 2008 or 7. It was a deliberate strategy by the Federal Reserve, by the politicians, by the banksters, and so forth. And really what it's done, and they knew it would, particularly Greenspan, is they wanted to see the destruction of the wealth of the middle class. In other words, they wanted to, ostensibly it was a program so people would refinance their house, take the money out and spend it. But nobody addressed the point, how are they going to pay it back? Or what impact is this going to have on the average citizen? And the reason they don't address it, and didn't address it, particularly Greenspan, as he saw 2005, 2006, and this bubble getting so huge, is that they wanted it to happen. They wanted people to be broke, dependent on what? Government, obviously. That's the whole scheme. And the repeal of Glass-Steagall, without going into a lot of detail, Glass-Steagall was formed in 1933 because after the crash of 29, Pecora had all these hearings, and they came to the determination that after their investigation, that the crash was caused primarily by the banks that were in the investment business, and they were trading derivatives, and they were doing all kinds of leverage things as early as the 20s. You know, it was a wild time in the 20s. It was called, what, the Roaring 20s, for a good reason. So what they did then with Glass-Steagall is they separated the investment banks from the commercial banks. And it stayed that way until the 90s. And Alan Greenspan's number one charge when he took control or became the Fed head in, that'd be 1987 after the crash, was to get that repealed. and through Bill Clinton and so forth, they got it repealed. So that opened the flood, gates. And of course, you had Barney Frank leading the tirade there to get all these loans, these subprime loans, to people that couldn't pay them back. So it was a concerted effort by the Wall Street banksters, the Federal Reserve, Congress, and so forth to create this bubble. And of course, we know what happened as a result of that. So that program was designed to fail. Just like Obamacare is designed to fail. So that people say, help me, and of course government then comes in and provides all the answers. All the elites that made these huge profits, none of them have gone to jail. There's been no accountability, and we see it at the veterans, we see it at IRS, we see it in all these bureaucratic nightmares that we're faced with. There's about $150 billion in fines levied by the government against the banks. Wells and Bank America and all of them. $150 billion. None of that money has been accounted for. I call it Obama's slush fund. He's used that money to whatever need he wants to use it. The other part about it in the social, which you're very familiar with, is that political correctness was a deliberate strategy that came out of the 60s and the 70s. And we've had now, 5 decades of it now. The assumption on political correctness was that you had to treat everyone with respect. So they pick a situation that 99% of the population is going to agree with. Everybody should be treated equal. I mean, all of us are going to say that. But that's not the goal they had in mind. They were preaching tolerance, and then when they got all of our children, hooked on this concept of political correctness, then they became totally intolerant of what? You and I. The conservatives were the ones that was an exception. You could be intolerant with our people. But they've indoctrinated our children. I mean, just think about your grandkids and your kids that were going to school in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and what they would come home with. I mean, it's just incredible. But it worked. So they devastated the middle class economically, made them dependent upon government, and they got control of the schools. The progressives got a hold of the control of the schools. And that's one reason why we have such a severe social and political situation today. Okay, the third item is political, and the theme is very simple. What we're experiencing today, in my opinion, is political and cultural Marxism. My first economic book came out in 2008, which I remember a whole bunch of people here bought that book, The Aftermath of Greed, which I told about, how the real estate market, how we got to that point. And what's happened here, in fact, in that book, I labeled Barack Obama a Marxist. And my editor said, you can't say that. You can't say that. But I insisted. And I really took the heat for it. I had done my homework. And I was just telling Ann that after John Kerry lost the election in, 2004? 2004. George Soros had a great big conference here in Scottsdale. He brought in all these big money players on the left, and they made a commitment of billions of dollars to fund MoveOn.org, the Tides Foundation, everything else, get all the money, all this cash to these people out there, recruiting these people to his army. And of course, that's how he had handpicked Barack Obama to be his candidate for president. That was done here in Scottsdale, Arizona, if you can believe that. Of course, people were from all over the country, but anyway. Barack Obama is a student of Saul Alinsky. A lot of people don't know that Hillary Clinton grew up in a very strong conservative Republican household, her father and her mother. But she discovered Saul Alinsky, Chicago, and she was in Illinois and so forth. By the time she went to Wellesley College, she was a devout Marxist, and she's remained the same. Most people don't know that. But in the Rules for Radicals, what they teach, or what Alinsky teaches, is the way Marxism takes over and communism takes over is to destroy the culture, destroy our religion, and destroy our families. And of course, the big thing is create class conflict. They've done all that. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in today. Capitalism is the cause of income inequality. And they got all these young people believing it because they were indoctrinated, over the last 3 or 4 decades. It's just absolutely amazing to listen to some of these students on campuses, the University of Missouri thing, and what the people espouse. This one guy, his name is Salih Muhammad. Talking about the Black Lives Matter and everything else. He's the head of a group called African Black Coalition. And his theme is this: new constitution or the bullet. That's the choice we have. He says, and I've listened to his talk, as long as we have America has the existing constitution, which was drafted by white racists who had slaves, that black people will never have a fair chance in this country. And that's what they're preaching. And it's spreading to all the campuses around the country, with the exception of Hillsdale. They won't get to Hillsdale. But this is what Black Lives Matter and all that it's about. It's really. One of my favorite authors is George Orwell. How many of you read 1984? What's the main theme? What was George telling us back in 1947 when he wrote that book? Totalitarianism, right? Okay. But just imagine this, folks. Here's a man writing in 1947. We didn't even have TVs then, right? What was Big Brother? Big Brother was the TV. And it worked both ways. You were watching TV, and the TV was watching you. He envisioned this. And the theme of his book is government would get to control people through the use of technology. And of course, that's what we see today in not only technology, but the whole picture that the government uses technology for control. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry about that. And the proles are 95% of the population. That's what's happening in Europe. You see, you're going to have the elites with 1% or less than 1% of the population, and the control has been now consolidated. 27 countries, there's only 5 people that control 27 countries and everything they do. They gave up their sovereignty, and now they can't get out. The Dutch are trying to get out. The Swedes are trying to get out. I was in Sweden. I've got family in Sweden. And I could see it happening in 2004 when I was there. But right now, the Swedes have lost their culture. The French are going to lose their culture, which they're very, very proud of. Well, the French are very proud of their lifestyle and but it's going to be destroyed. This is a plan. One speaker in Tucson said that what this diaspora is this migration of Muslims is revenge for the Crusades. But to the elites, it's a way of getting absolute control over the society. They'll let these immigrants destroy the existing order, and then they'll fill the vacuum. That's what it's all about. They're being used just like they use the Hispanics coming across our border into Arizona and the rest of the country. Angela Merkel said yesterday on TV in a short bit that was on there, she said, quote, "Islam belongs to Germany." Angela Merkel was raised in East Germany. She's a communist. She's been a communist all these years. And she's a devout Marxist. You know, if any country is going to rise up and do something about the government, it'll be the Germans. But you know, the German military today cannot do anything to intercede. When you watch this video, do you know who Joe Miller is? This group should know. He's a real conservative from Alaska and so forth. He has a program called Restoring Liberty. He's got a 15-minute video of what's going on with these immigrants in Europe, and particularly in Germany. And you can't believe, see, the press and the media is not covering this at all. They're going into the houses, stealing everything people have, and raping the women in the house. But they don't tell that part of the story. So it absolutely is. I came up with the phrase that the goal of the Muslim diaspora is to immigrate, to perpetuate, and to indoctrinate. That's what the goal is. And one writer said that it was a revenge for the Crusades. Okay, under what circumstances would Barack Obama remain in office after November 2016? I'd entertain an answer. I've got my points. Sure, that's the yeah. Yeah. I was in Albuquerque last summer, driving down, coming back from Santa Fe, my wife. I looked over and I saw this police car. And then I did a quick double take. On the door was the words, Federal Police. It's the first one I've ever seen. Where was this? Albuquerque. Federal Police. I said to Olivia, I said, look at that. She said, well, it's a police car. I said, read what it says. Federal Police. She said, are there federal police? I said, there are now. That's unconstitutional. Yeah, well, no, it wasn't. Now, yeah, I think that well, sure, they're sovereign nation. They have their own police and a different color. This was a very unusual situation. Okay, here are some reasons why. Here's the reason why the elitists, the George Soroses of the world, do not want this presidency to end. Hillary is tied to Obama's policies. She's going to try to differentiate, but she's not going to be successful. By spring, by early summer, as soon as she gets the nomination, her poll numbers are probably going to look pretty sick. The Marxists are not going to take the chance that they're going to lose control. It's taken them so long, it's taken them 100 years to get to this point where they're in control. They're not going to let it go. You know, I've studied the Russian Revolution and history and so forth. They're not going to let it go. All right?